Hello, friends. This is Anderson Marchak,
And I'm Ricardo Segura.
and we are the Panel Bros. Welcome to the panel.
Welcome to the panel.
All right,
Yeah.
here we are.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So, Ricardo and I were chatting, as we normally do. And as of this recording, it is late August of 2023. And a certain superhero movie was just released. And it was featuring a Latino superhero by the name of Blue
Mhm.
Beetle. And unfortunately, we can't give a breakdown to Blue Beetle just yet, but I got to thinking. I said, you know what? Let's do a breakdown of a Hispanic or Latino hero,
Mhm.
and I pitched the idea of of someone that's been around for a while, and Ricardo agreed. He was really excited when I told him
Very.
about this movie. So let's just get to it here. This movie was directed by Martin Campbell,
Mhm.
and it was released. Hmm, I have a date down here. Yes, July 17th of 1998,
Yeah, we're going back to the
and
90s.
there's a lot of familiar faces that we will talk about.
Mhm.
But today we are discussing the Mask of Zorro.
Bro, listen. Listen. This is absolutely one of my favorite movies. And when you brought it up, I was like anything else that I had possibly been thinking about went out the window. I was like, "Oh, we're doing that. Let's do that. Let's do that. Let's do the Mask of Zorro." I was so excited to rewatch it. It's been a few years since I've seen it, and I don't need a reason to rewatch it, but the fact that we were going to be able to watch it and talk about it and talk about our feelings, and I have a lot of memories with the character. So I remember what it was like being a kid watching the show in the 50s and then watching the movie in 1998 and just being like, what? So again, all these memories started flooding back to me, and we're like, oh, we're gonna get to talk about it. So I am thrilled that we're doing the Mask of Zorro.
Well, I have a connection to several of the actors in this movie. One in particular
Oh yeah,
that
yeah, we
if
know.
you folks listen, then you'll know who I'm talking about. But um, I'm looking forward to discussing it because I have memories different to yours as far as
Hmm.
this movie goes that we will get into. So, all right, let's get started.
Yeah.
So, it is 1821, and a masked swordsman by the name of Zorro is defending the commoners of Las Californias from Spain's soldiers. We have Don Rafael Montero, Las Californias governor. He sets a trap for Zorro at the public execution of three peasants. And Zorro stops the execution, and Montero's soldiers are stopped by two young brothers, Alejandro and Joaquin Murrieta. And Zorro fights the remaining soldiers and thanks the brothers by giving Joaquin a medallion. Don Montero uh, figures out that the Spanish born nobleman, Don Diego de la Vega, is Zorro,
Yeah.
and he attempts to arrest him at his home. A sword fight begins, and a fire breaks out, and de la Vega's wife, Esperanza, who Montero also has feelings for, um, she ends up dying in the battle. She jumps in the way when one of the soldiers pulls out a gun, and she ends up taking the bullet for De La Vega, unfortunately. While the building is burning, Montero takes Diego's infant daughter, Elena, as his own before sending De La Vega to prison and returning to Spain. So there's a lot to unpack from this situation here.
There's
Uh,
a lot.
the movie opens. It's really fun. We get to see
Yes.
Sir Anthony Hopkins as Zorro, just having a blast.
It was so great opening with such a fun and exciting set piece. I think it laid the groundwork for what the movie was going to be. It's a very swashbuckling type of film,
Mhm.
and we have Zorro leaping around and swinging and sword fights and punching and kicking and everything else, and being rooted by the people and everyone supporting and yelling for Zorro. And we have our two young kids our two young brothers watching and idolizing the character and the hero that they know as Zorro and whatnot. And it was really cool. And I love the approach that they had with this film, where they weren't doing an origin story of Zorro, but a passing of the torch. So we open up with the Zorro that we already love and know. Like
Right.
we're watching a Zorro that we have seen for years and years, whether it was through the television shows and whatnot, and just prior knowledge of the character. We're seeing him near the end of his journey as the character, as the superhero, I should say.
Yeah.
And the idea that he was going to go off and just retire from the mask and hat and spend it with his wife, and in hopes to have 5 children. He makes a joke, 5 children, and she's like, 5, and he goes, oh, what is that, not enough? And it's this really, really sweet moment, because he's prepared to give all that up. He feels that he's given the people hope, and that they are willing to fight back. And unfortunately for that family, Don Rafael shows up, and like you said, a big fight and scuffle ensues. She ends up taking a bullet and dying. And Don Rafael says it. He goes, I never would have brought any harm to her, And De La Vega says she wasn't yours to protect. And there's that rage and jealousy from Don Rafael, who always wanted to be with her. And like you said, set the house on fire and takes De La Vega's daughter. And I was watching it today, and this is the first time I've seen the movie as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember just being really emotionally upset that he took his little girl. And I was like, ooh. And I had the Arthur fist. You ever see the meme of Arthur where his fist is just doing like that? And my fist was just sitting there, and I was like, ooh, this is not good.
Because he,
this
as a last request, he asked him to let him hold the baby. At least let me hold the baby one last time before you. And of course, he didn't let him do it.
Nope. And he said, I want you to live. Don Rafael was so cruel. He goes, I want you to live knowing that you've lost all of this. I want you to feel what you've been doing to me for all these years. Because again, he never got Esperanza. De La Vega did. And Don Rafael had to watch that. So now he's like, I'm going to take your daughter, and you're going to watch knowing what you've lost. And it's a very hard opening, and very well done.
And not to make light of what he did of what Montero did to him,
Mm-hmm.
but we did see that he did love Esperanza too, because when the soldier accidentally kills Esperanza, he loses his life for doing it. Montero grabs the gun and shoots him. No, I didn't tell you to do that. Because technically speaking, he didn't tell anybody to shoot.
No,
not
at all.
So it was just kind of like, okay, well, he got vengeance for the situation, but guess what? Esperanza still is gone now.
Yeah.
The baby doesn't have a mom anymore, and now you're taking the father away. So, we appreciate your love for Esperanza and getting vengeance, but guess what? You're still taking a father. Now, because of you, a mother and a father is being taken away from a little girl.
Yep. Because Don Rafael lost in that moment, because he was there for Esperanza and he lost her. So he's like, all right, well, I'm going to take your little girl. Like, I can't have Esperanza. I'm going to feel pain for this. You're going to feel pain for the rest of your life, knowing that you couldn't protect her. And he takes her. And again, I was seething, man. I was so upset. And I was like, ooh, I can't wait for him to get it.
So we fast forward 20 years. It is now 1841. Alejandro and Joaquin are bandits, and they're running a scam to collect the bounty on their own heads and steal a strongbox.
Mm-hmm.
They fail, unfortunately, and are caught by Captain Harrison Love. This is Montero's new American right-hand man. Alejandro escapes. Alejandro, played by the talented Antonio Banderas.
Yeah.
He escapes, while Joaquin shoots himself to not be executed by Captain Love. Really emotional scene.
He doesn't give him the satisfaction of being able to execute him, and he takes his own life.
Right, and he does the whole, they're going to keep chasing us, so if I stay back, it'll give you time to escape.
Yep.
And from the bushes, Alejandro sees his brother give his own life so he can live and escape.
Yeah, because Joaquin gets shot in the back of the leg, and when Alejandro tries to help him, he punches him in the face.
Yeah,
and he goes, "Get away!" Like he knows that if they both stay, they're both dead, and he punches him, and he makes him go, and he gives him he gives him enough time to get away and watch from the bushes, and unfortunately, he sees what happens to his brother.
So Montero returns to California with the now adult Elena.
Mhm.
played by Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Good God. Listen,
Yeah, we're gonna talk about her a lot this episode. So
they and we'll talk about it later, but there's a technical thing they do with this movie. You might have noticed it, that whenever she's on screen alone, there's a softness
yes,
that they use specifically for her. And it she's already one of the most beautiful people on the planet, and it just captures this fantasy like um feeling when you look at her on screen. I really appreciate it, and you notice it because they'll have back and forth scenes with her and another person, but when you see it on her, there's a
there,
softness
there's
to
this
it.
angelic light,
Yes,
and
and it's specifically for her.
right, and I think about Galadriel in Lord of the
Mhm.
Rings. They
Okay.
used a different light when she was on screen.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
so,
It,
um,
it, it
yeah.
I was so intrigued by it. I couldn't find it. I went and looked and tried to find all the lenses that they used in the movie, and I was able to find all the lenses and cameras and whatnot. And I was trying to see if they use any specific dream lens for her, but I couldn't find that much detail. I just found all the cameras and lenses, but I wanted to see if I could find and pinpoint specifically how they filmed her. But like you said, I think the word angelic was perfect.
Yeah. So, of course, Elena believes Montero is her father,
Hmm.
and he has lied to Elena all these years that her mother died in childbirth. Montero reappears um, in the jail to finish off De La Vega.
Hmm.
Apparently, I guess Elena's getting older. She's figuring things out. He doesn't want it to get back to Elena that De La Vega is her biological father.
Yeah.
So he goes to the jail, and it's been 20 years, so he has a hard time recognizing anybody as De La
Yeah.
Vega. And we have a I am Spartacus moment where
Yes, a Spartacus moment.
everybody's jumping forward. I am Zorro. No, I
I
am
am Zorro.
Zorro.
I
You
am
know? Yeah,
Zorro.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was hilarious. It was great. And thankfully, due to a bandana actually half covering De La Vega's face, he was able to not be
Mhm.
caught. And this does motivate De La Vega to escape because he's wondering, well, why did he come to find me?
Yeah.
So he he finds a way to escape. He uses his tricks and tactics as
Listen,
Zorro, his his
this is
his
Zorro
his
we're
his,
talking
his
about.
Batman like.
Yes, dude. This is Batman for the Latinos, bro. That's
Yeah.
exactly what it is to many people. It's like that's the Batman for Latinos.
So he ends up escaping. He makes a fool of the guards and such,
Mhm.
and he encounters Alejandro getting drunk and mourning his brother, and recognizes the medallion that he gave to his brother.
Mhm.
And, Alejandro is ready to step forward and kill Captain Love for what happened between him and his brother. And De La Vega says, no, you're going to die,
Yeah,
and
you're in no condition to go against that guy right now.
so now we get more of this funny, this funny fight for choreography. And, he makes a fool of him, and it's great.
It's
It's,
so good. One of the strong suits of this movie is the humor. It's done so well. It's very adventurous and it's very fun. And he's drunk. Like there's no way he can handle his own.
yeah.
And very easily, De La Vega is just swiping him away with one move, and he's falling through things, falling over tables and whatnot. And he's like, "See, you're not in a position to be able to do this."
Right. I liked Antonio Banderas, not only in this role, but in this part in particular, because he's got a reputation for being such a suave actor at this point. Just very
Yes.
suave, Latin lover, just very
Hmm.
smooth. And we get to see that in this movie eventually. But here he's got this comedic timing
Yes.
down, and it's wonderful.
He's a goober. It's
Yeah.
very silly.
Yeah.
He had me laughing throughout the film quite a few times, but seeing him be so silly and a lot of physical humor, and it's not something that we were seeing from Antonio. Like you said, he was very suave, and as you mentioned, we will see it later, but it was great to see him in this light.
So De La Vega agrees to make Alejandro his protege in order for them to battle for their respective enemies,
Hmm.
Montero and Love. Alejandro agrees to undergo De La Vega's training in Zorro's secret cave underneath. Uh,
Oh yeah.
so um, this is underneath the ruins of the family estate, so they can both take revenge. So
Mhm.
it'll be a situation where Alejandro is going to become the new Zorro because obviously De La Vega, he's older now,
Yeah.
and he retired as Zorro 20
Yes.
years earlier.
This is the closest live action Batman Beyond movie we have ever
I
gotten.
like it.
This is the closest we've gotten to it. We've got the much older Cape Crusader who has retired the Cal and is essentially finding a new protege and working together in the underground lair, aka cave. I was like, this is our Batman Beyond up to this point.
I'm glad that you said that because we're going to go on a little tangent here. It is a very well-known lore with Batman that
Mhm.
that was the mark of Zorro is what the
Yes.
Waynes were seeing the night that they died,
Yes.
and Zorro was an influence to a young Bruce Wayne. So
It was.
obviously not modern day. This is just going to age Batman
Mhm.
as far as how long ago, in when Batman first debuted,
Mhm.
but. Um, so I like that you're bringing up all these Batman comparisons because you're not that far off, you
No,
know?
there's deep connections between the character of Zorro and Batman,
Yeah,
and you can see it. And this was one of those scenes where, again, I was chatting with some people. I was like, "This is like our Batman Beyond, man. Like
right,
we haven't gotten that yet, but this is the closest thing to it."
right. Yeah, so, the whole comparison between Batman and Zorro, that's always there. But now
Yeah.
we're looking at, oh, hold up. It's a younger protege to become the
Mm-hmm.
new, person. It's like, yeah, it is a Batman Beyond situation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
good on you, Ricardo, for pointing that out. Um, So the one thing that I remember, just their training, it's really cool. It's
Mm-hmm.
just that old school, you know, montage situation. The whole Mickey and Rocky,
Yeah.
just
It's very funny. There's a scene where De La Vega asks Alejandro. He goes, "Do you know how to use that thing?" And he goes, "Yeah." The pointy end goes into the other person. And it just shows you how little he knows about sword fighting and challenging and fighting and whatnot in general. And he does the whole, he swings the sword back and forth like a crazy person. And De La Vega just swipes it out of his hand. And it's
yeah.
just, again, it shows us exactly where Alejandro is, so we can see how much he progresses by the end of the training, where it's very humorous now, and seeing how good he really gets under the teachings, it's really fun to watch.
So while still being trained, Alejandro decides to take a test run as Zorro,
Mm-hmm.
without telling De La Vega, and he steals a horse that resembles Zorro's steed Tornado from the local garrison. This is hilarious. So we get to see more of
Yes.
this action here, but now Alejandro as Zorro, and it's pretty entertaining. We get to see him, go against all the guards, and then we see the big guy come out, and
Yes.
just an old trope from action movies. Nice throwback.
Yeah, the really, really big guy that comes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that you can't stop, and it's hilarious. He's throwing him literally from
Yeah,
end to end, and he gets these cannonballs, and he keeps
bro.
hitting him. He keeps and it doesn't do anything. So he keeps
No.
hitting him in the face, and then we get the spit take with the teeth coming
Yep.
out
The
of the
teeth
mouth.
falling out, and he falls over like a big tree falling down the
Yeah, it's
forest.
just a car. It's
Again,
just right out
yes.
of a cartoon.
This was very, very. This was a fun swashbuckle scene. He's jumping all over the place. He's swinging off lights and everything. He's cutting ropes and he's swinging up to the second floor. He's fighting a guy that's like 7 foot tall. It's done in a humorous way. He turns around and he's only up to the midsection of the guy, hits him with cannonballs. Everyone's in shock of what's happening. Spits all the teeth out, falls over like a tree. And when it comes back, Alejandro has his leg on a cannon and he's just there with a light. And he's like, "Hello." And it's just so humorous and well done.
Yeah. So we eventually get to the scene where Alejandro he goes to hide in the chapel,
Mhm.
and he's hiding on one side, and Elena's on the other side, thinking she's confessing her sins to the priest. And we get to see Catherine Zeta-Jones do a little bit of acting here.
Yes.
This is for the most part, her introduction to everybody, and we get to see what she has opposite Antonio
Mhm.
Banderas, who's a little bit seasoned as an actor by
Yeah.
now, and she's sitting there. I've sinned, and he's like, tell me your sins, my child. Just it's really entertaining. It's hilarious, and I really enjoyed her in the sense that she was going for it in this
She
scene
was.
because she was like, he knows what she's trying to say, but he wants to get her to say it,
He's egging her on, and
Yeah,
it's
she's
so
like,
funny.
I was with this man and I just felt this burning inside of me,
Yeah.
and he's like, was it lustful by any chance? And she's like, yes, it was
Yes, very
lustful.
lustful. Yeah. This whole sequence is one of the funniest in the movie because again, she's trying to legitimately confess her sins.
Yeah.
And he's prodding at her and trying to get
Yeah.
information
Right,
about himself.
because he knows that she's talking about him.
About him, because she said there was a man in a mask, and he's like, oh, his ears perk up. It also has one of the funniest exchanges in the entire movie, in my opinion, is when she goes, I have breaking the fourth commandment, and he goes, did you kill somebody? And she's like, no, that is not the fourth commandment. He goes, oh, I'm sorry. And she goes, I had impure thoughts about a man. And then there
Right.
he goes. Once he hears
I
that,
dishonored my father. Right,
yep,
right.
and just keeps pulling that
It
thread
was great.
just so he can hear about what she's thinking about him. And I was like, man, this whole sequence was
Right.
fantastic.
And from this moment, it's that will they or won't they situation.
Yes,
It
yes.
starts from here, which it continues for a while in the movie. So Alejandro gets back to the cave and De La Vega scolds him. You know, you're not ready yet.
Mhm.
You're seeking fame and fortune. Zorro was a servant of the people. He
Yeah.
wasn't a thief and he wasn't a seeker of fame. And De La Vega says Zorro did what was needed, and Alejandro said, "Well, now he's needed again."
Mhm.
So really cool situation here. Um, it kind of reminds me of just that old trope of when Batman retires,
Mhm.
and it's like, well, is he needed again? You
Yeah.
know, um, and we've seen that several times now. We saw that in The Dark Knight Rises. He was gone for 8 years, but then he
Mhm.
was needed again, and he wasn't really gone in Batman v Superman, but it was a situation where he was always in the shadows, and now
Yeah.
he's not in the shadows anymore.
Yeah.
So he challenges Alejandro to gain Montero's trust, but through a more like suave approach,
Yeah.
charm. And Alejandro says, "Well, this is going to take some time because
That
he's a bumbling thief. He's a
again,
fool."
another great moment where De La Vega's like, and now we're gonna do something. We're gonna do something. He goes, what? He goes, you know, you have to convince Don Rafael that you can be a gentleman, and he's just like, me, a gentleman? This is going to take a lot of work. And
Yeah,
it's so funny that he's never once hesitated towards learning how to sword fight, how to do parkour, if you will, and
yeah.
everything else, and ride a horse. But this was like, this is going to take a lot of work. It's very, very funny, and it's very honest about the character. About he knows who he is, like just from his physical appearance, he knows who he is, and he's like, I'm kind of a bandit, I'm a scrub, you know what I mean? And they're going to freshen him up.
So yeah, he gives him a little haircut, and
Mhm.
he realizes that he has an odor, so it's time to take a bath. So
Mhm.
cleaned him up a little bit. Um, Alejandro poses as a visiting nobleman named Don Alejandro uh, del Castillo y Garcia,
Yeah.
with De La Vega as his servant Bernardo, and they attend a party at Montero's place. There, he earns Elena's admiration and enough of Montero's trust to be invited to a secret meeting between noblemen.
Mhm.
Um, we get some flirtation between Elena and him. They do a dance on the floor.
Oh man.
It's really cool. And Don Raphael like apologizes, and oh
Yeah.
no, it's okay.
Because listen, like her dancing would be considered very like almost offensive.
Right.
And it's very free spirited. And it's funny because like you said, the whole night there's a lot of back and forth at the dinner table. And even when there's a mention of Zorro, Alejandro has to kind of like throw them off, like, oh, he probably wears a mask to cover his bald head and hideous face. Like he's doing that. And you can see her reaction to that, where she doesn't really approve of that. And they're talking politics and going back and forth, but there's still this energy between them that you can't deny. And when they get to the dance floor, you can kind of feel that energy really connect and really hit. And they're both cutting loose. And Don Rafael comes. First of all, the dance is it's just Antonio is a very lucky man. I remember watching this when I was younger. I'm like, wow, to be able to dance with Catherine Zeta-Jones like that, it was beautiful. It was fantastic. And it was like you could feel you could feel the lust she was talking about, because it was the way she was holding, the way she was like getting very close to his face. You can feel that passion in the dance. And Don Raphael was like, I apologize if you're offended. He was like, no, no, no. I mean, if this is the way that they dance here, it's a very free spirit. And that bothers her, because she understands that within that dance, Don Alejandro he was in it with her. Like, he was in it with her, but he's like, oh, like, that's, your daughter, man. She's a very free spirit. And she's like, how dare you? And she just storms off.
Yeah. So in the secret meeting, Montero hints at a plan to retake California for the Dons and proclaim it as an independent republic by buying it from General Santa Anna, who needs money for the upcoming Mexican-American War. So we get a little history here. Montero takes Alejandro and the noblemen to El Dorado, a secret gold mine where peasants and prisoners are used for slave labor.
Mm-hmm.
And the plan is to buy California from Santa Anna using gold mined from its own land.
Paying them off with their own gold.
Terrible.
And using slave labor to get it. Like, this is like, we're talking the bad of the bads.
Yeah.
This was, and this scene itself will point out the elitist point of view versus the people beneath them. It's a huge topic in this one scene alone.
Yeah. And also, this is the scene where the mentor that Alejandro had, Alejandro and his brother Joaquin, they had like a bit of a mentor that was with them when they were thieves, and he bumps into him again, and he sees him, and he's coming in to try and do something to to the leadership here, and he gets shot, and then Alejandro looks at him and kind of before he dies, like, hey, I'm okay.
And he recognizes him, and you can see there's a smirk on his face, and that character had a very important line, because Love says, "Oh, don't listen to him, gentlemen. He's just another thief. He's a common thief." And he goes, "Yeah, as common as they come." He goes, "I steal gold, I steal possessions." He goes, "But you steal people's lives." And it just shows the distinction between those two parties. And he ends up getting killed. And after he's killed, they all laugh about it. They make jokes at his expense, and they're like, Peckerwood? And they make a joke and they laugh and they walk away. And again, it shows that big difference between the elites in this film versus the people beneath them, where this individual just lost his life and they could care less, and they're making jokes about it. And Alejandro gives that moment. He looks at him and he recognizes him, and Love is just laughing, goes, "This is the second time I've shot this man flying through the air." And it just, again, it shows how little they think of these people.
Yeah, that was a 3-finger jack. I had to look that up. Yeah, 3-finger jack. So now we get a scene between Bernardo and Elena. And
oh, this is a good scene.
Yeah, it's really heartfelt. She says he seems very familiar, or are you sure we haven't met before? And he's pretty much denying it the whole time. This is he's finally getting to see his adult daughter for the first time, and having a one-on-one and talking with her. And it's like, no, we've never met before, So you're getting that little moment here, like, oh man, he's with his daughter now for the first time in so many years. So, but it was really nice,
It was, and she could feel it, and she even mentions it in his voice. Like, she feels like she's heard it before, and he's like, I don't know. And she's like, well, it's a very lovely voice, and it's a moment where he's so close and yet still so far, because he can't say anything, he can't admit it. And this is the first time he's having a real conversation with her. And obviously you have two great actors in this scene, and you just feel it. It's a really well done scene.
So we fast forward to Elena walking in the market, and she meets a woman who was her nanny. And the nanny tells Elena her parents' real identity. And they have this little moment, and she wants to give her this scarf. And, it's like, no, my mother died a long time ago. She's like, no, I knew your mother, and I was your nanny. And Elena's having a hard time digest all of this because now it's challenging what her father's told her
Yep.
over the years. De la Vega sends Alejandro, who is now Zorro, to steal Montero's map leading to the gold mine. Zorro duels with Montero, Love, and their guards at his place. And
So good.
just really entertaining. Just Zorro full on fight choreography, comedy, the
It
whole
was
deal.
it everything. He was doing front flips. Like it was amazing. Like again, one of the biggest highlights of this film I think is the stunt work and the choreography for the fight scenes. It's so well done and everything is practical. It's one of the reasons why the film holds up so well. Is a lot of these scenes are extremely practical, and seeing these actors put in the time and work to do these sword fights and be as involved as they can be. This whole sequence is just it's like a ride. It's an adventure, and I loved every aspect of it.
So Alejandro escapes, but Elena chases after him, attempting to retrieve Montero's map. They end up having this long duel. Where we're gonna talk about it right now. It's a very
Great,
it's
great
it's
scene.
a memorable scene. They are dueling. We get to see what can't Elena do. We've seen her
Bro.
dance,
Mhm.
and now we can see her sword fight, and she's going pound for pound against
Yeah,
the new Zorro. So
yeah,
she knows her thing. Um, they're getting little nicks on each other. A little slice here, a little slice there. But it's playful. It's not to the
yes.
point where they're trying to really injure each other, so to speak. Um, but the funny thing is Alejandro keeps stealing a kiss from her every time
Mhm.
he bests her in the moment, which makes her mad because
Yes, it throws her off
right.
completely. It gets her
And
mad.
I love Zeta Jones here. She's like screaming, ah, like she's
It's
coming at him. It's
she
hilarious.
the whole scene is great, and Catherine Zeta-Jones the entire movie is absolutely crushing it. But this scene was so energetic, and this scene was fierce because again, like she's fighting, she's getting more and more angry because again, he's stealing a kiss every now and then, and it's making her so upset and it's throwing her off her game. But she's coming with this raw intensity that I'm like, if she wanted to, man, she's gonna take you out. But again, it never felt extremely dangerous. It was extremely playful, but she was getting bested every once in a while, and she was getting very upset about it. And she absolutely devoured this scene.
Yeah. And then we finally have the shot that they put in the trailer. I wish they
Ah,
hadn't. But he tells her, he says, all right, he finally bests her. She can't get her sword, and he says, don't move. And he goes like this, and then all her clothes
yep.
from her top
It's
anyway,
and her
falls. And
hair is covering.
strategic, very PG-13, very,
Yes.
very
Yes.
I guess a little more family friendly than
Very,
you
very
know,
funny. And again, Banderas, this is credit to him because again, we've always seen him play a very suave character, and he's so funny just in this moment where he's like, "Don't move," and he starts cutting at her dress in a very particular pattern. And as he's doing it, he's doing these head tilts as if like he's like really admiring what he's doing each time. And in the last one, it's just this really good like and and then the dress just completely falls off and she screams and he just smiles and she uses the hat to cover herself
yeah.
and now they're face to face and now we get what we get.
Yeah, and then they
Yes.
passionately share the kiss because they
Yes.
they have they have a little exchange there.
Mhm.
Um, so once again, just yet another scene where Zeta Jones, just every single scene where
Bro,
she's
she's
called
great.
upon in this movie, she brings it. So fearing Santa Anna could discover the scheme, Montero decides to destroy the mine and kill the workers.
Mhm.
De la Vega tells Alejandro to release the workers on his own so he can reclaim Elena.
Yeah.
And Alejandro sets off, feeling betrayed by Diego's vendetta. And De la Vega corners Montero at at his place and then finally reveals his identity, demanding Elena be brought to them to hear the whole truth. And Montero arrests him. Um, this is where we finally get the moment where we want Elena to find out who her real father is.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, Bernardo, what are you doing? His alias, and he has, the sword to Montero's throat, and Montero's still trying to lie, and then finally, he reveals some information um, concerning the flowers that used to hang,
Yeah.
and it was, I believe, she met the nanny, and the nanny told her the name of the flowers that the
Mm-hmm.
mom used to hang, and then so now Elena's just so confused. Now she's like,
Yeah.
is
Because
he
he
telling?
knew. He knew the
Yeah,
flowers.
it's like
He knew.
maybe he is my father. I don't know. She
Yeah.
doesn't know yet. You
She
know,
doesn't know yet. She's got a couple variables. Obviously, she had the nanny who spoke to her. She has she knows for whatever reason she recognizes him. She's not sure why, so that's playing with her. And then the idea that Bernardo is trying to kill her father, it doesn't make any sense. Like, what? Why would he have this vendetta against you? What's going on? And I hate Don Rafael in this scene because he goes, if I die, the truth dies with me. And
right?
he just refuses to tell the truth and says, basically, this man had a daughter, lost her, and now he wants to claim you as his own. And it bothers me to my core that even in those moments, he would not tell the truth. And unfortunately, they end up arresting him, De La Vega, and she's left pondering. You can see it in her eyes, like she's
Right.
like, something's not right.
But it must have made some type of impact here because De La Vega does tell her about the flowers
Mm-hmm.
as he's leaving, and I guess she believes him because she releases him from his cell,
Yep.
and they proceed to the mine where Alejandro and De La Vega have this big battle against their sworn enemies. Love against Alejandro and Montero against De La Vega, and they each go at it. Um, Montero, excuse me, not Montero. Love is eventually slain
Mm-hmm.
by Alejandro, and he gets a sword through him. Meanwhile, on the other end, De La Vega and Montero, they're going back and forth. Um, there's a moment where he has Montero, and Elena jumps in to save him.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, I know he lied about everything, but this is the man that raised me.
Yeah. He raised her. So
This is, please don't do this. And, like true villainy, he pretends that he's going to shoot Elena, which causes, De La Vega to drop his sword. You fool. Did you think I would actually do that?
yeah.
He ends up shooting him, but um, De La Vega eventually gets, recovers the ground, and um, he sees that there's this rope, near the foot of Montero, and he hits this thing, and Montero eventually ends up getting dragged away
Yeah.
on this cart with gold.
With the gold, very
Yes,
symbolic.
the
It's like,
gold
yep.
he was going to use for the
Yep.
scam. And in a very old school action movie way, it flies off the cliff. And meanwhile, we have Love here with the blade
Yes.
through his
Just looking up and
right,
screaming.
right. So they both go to their demise.
Yep.
Um, of note, Elena wasn't in the scene at the time to see Montero fall to his death.
Mm-mm.
I mean, at that point, she pretty much, I've tried to save him, but look at how evil of a man he is. Like,
Yeah, the last we saw was she tried to even stop Don Rafael from shooting De La Vega, but he gets clipped and like she falls over, and then we see her just starting to save people.
right,
Because, like you said, at that point, it's like, yeah, Don Rafael's gone.
right,
Don't even try anymore. Don't
right,
even try.
yeah. So Elena and Alejandro free the workers before all the explosives go off, and now they find De La Vega, who he is going to succumb to his wounds from being
Hmm.
shot. Um, Before dying, he makes peace with the two of them and gives his blessing for Alejandro to continue as Zorro and marry Elena. How sweet!
Hmm.
He does the whole puts their hands
Yep.
together before he dies, and it's really sad. I got choked up because
It is. It is.
yeah,
He.
he's like, now I'm losing you again. You
Yeah, he
know,
goes, I've gone this long just to get you back, only to lose you again. And
right?
she
And then
goes, she says the father, like she calls him father, and it's nice.
yeah, It's really nice.
She goes, "You'll never lose me," and she
Yeah,
calls him father, and I'm like, oh, and it
it's
hits you
good.
right in the heartstrings. Yep.
It's good. So sometime later, we see that Alejandro and Elena are married, and they have rebuilt the De La Vega house. Alejandro tells his infant son, Joaquin, of Don Diego's deeds as Zorro, and
Hmm.
we close out. Um, so the first thing, and that's our movie, by the way.
And it is a fantastic movie. I
Yeah.
absolutely adore it.
The first thing I thought about upon this rewatch is that without the Mask of Zorro, we don't get Pirates of the Caribbean.
I'm so glad you said that, because as I was watching it, I'm like, this feels like it really is what kicked off Pirates of the Caribbean. The feel, the
Right.
atmosphere, just every, like, I felt that too. The swashbuckle nature that we do see in the Pirates of the Caribbean film felt very reminiscent from what we see in the Mask of Zorro. So that is an excellent point.
Yeah. And but it's, as far as just a fun movie, I feel like it aged well. I had a really good time just watching it again and just reliving all of the memories, and such. It ended up being a decent box office at the time
Hmm.
of release. It was made for 95 million,
Hmm.
so under 100 million at the time, and it ended up making 250.3 million worldwide. So
Nice.
ended up being a box office success, of course. Um, we've already touched on the Batman comparisons,
Hmm.
obviously, and I like your take on it. It's a Batman Beyond take.
It is
I
the closest. It's the closest live action Batman Beyond film we have yet. We may get that movie one day, but as of right now, this is the closest one in nature to it.
Yeah. Um, there was a sequel, and unfortunately, it didn't hit as much as
Hmm.
this one did. I looked it up. It was eventually made in 2005, The Legend of Zorro,
Yeah,
and I believe Pirates of the Caribbean had already started doing their thing by '03, if I'm not
I think so.
mistaken.
I think
Yeah.
so.
So it didn't quite hit. Who knows if Pirates hadn't stolen the thunder of
The steam,
Zorro?
man, they took it. They took it.
Maybe they stole that thunder. Because now in Legend of Zorro we have Antonio Banderas and Catherine Zeta-Jones, both full-blown stars now at this point.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and unfortunately that one didn't hit as much. But The Mask of Zorro got nominated for 2 Oscars.
Heck yeah,
I looked it up. Yeah, so best sound at mixing and best sound editing. So there we go.
bro.
2 Oscar
Listen,
nominations.
there is a lot of technical applications in this film that hold up really well, and when you bring up the sound and design and whatnot, there's a lot of practicality in this movie overall, because you also mentioned how it ages well. It ages extremely well. This, if you didn't tell me this movie came out in 1998, you could have told me 2001, you could have told me 2004, and I wouldn't have batted an eye as you have gone through, because the movie has very, very, very little visual effects. Everything is practical. The explosions were practical, the stunt work was practical. There's maybe one clip, maybe 1 to 2 clips, where there is a visual effect with a background replacement. It's like maybe like 10 seconds in total, but other than that, great stunt work. And then you have the you use dummies for like falls and whatnot, wire work. So it ages so well, I think, because of that, because there wasn't anything in the movie that took me out of it. If we watch a movie that's relatively older, let's say 90s, this came out in 98, we'll talk about 90s, that a movie could be really well made, but some of the CGI or VFX might not hold up as strong, and you're reminded of it as we see it today as things progress. But what works for the Mask of Zorro is that it didn't rely on those visual effects enhancements or anything like that to a degree. Everything was practical. So everything holds up extremely well. I feel like I could show a buddy this who has never seen it, show it to him today, and he would be able to enjoy it. He or she would be able to enjoy it as if this was a new movie, because there's nothing about it that really dates it. The only thing that really dates the movie is knowing who the actors are and seeing them much younger. That's relatively the only thing that really dates it, because outside of that, the execution in almost every aspect of the film is done so well. It just ages like fine wine, man. Like I absolutely adore how good it holds up to this day.
So let's show some love to the cast here. In the lead of Zorro slash Alejandro, we have Antonio Banderas, and he had been doing a little bit of work in the
Mhm.
90s leading up till now. He was in Philadelphia. He was in Interview with a Vampire. Um, he was in the hit movie Desperado, which
Yes, dude.
maybe kind of
Love that
laid
movie.
the groundwork for him to be cast in
Yes.
this role. He was in Assassins.
Yep.
So he was in Evita, just he was doing some work, and then he got cast in this movie and it was a big hit. So that's as far as Antonio Banderas goes, and obviously his star grew tremendously
Mhm.
from this movie. It did a lot of work for him, as
Yeah.
far as an actor goes. We have Anthony Hopkins as Don Diego de la Vega / the original Zorro, obviously a living legend. And then the world got introduced to Catherine Zeta-Jones in this movie,
Oh yeah.
as Elena Montero. I'm gonna take a moment here.
Yeah, go ahead. Take your moment.
I'm, I'm, I'm,
Take your moment.
I'm gonna take a moment here.
Go ahead.
I love Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Oh yeah.
She is quite possibly, no, not quite possibly. She's my favorite actress of all time, and
Respect.
she did a lot of amazing work in the late 90s and in the 2000s, and her work was so strong that it inspired me to pursue acting,
Mm,
in college and such. And
that's huge.
if I ever get a chance to meet her, I'm going to tell her and say, there was a lot of actors I grew up watching, but you were the one actor that, that inspired me to the point of, you know what, I think I want to pursue acting in college. I want to study it because of how amazing she was on screen. Um, I'd seen many actresses up until then that lit up the
Mhm.
screen.
Oh yeah.
We have your Sandra Bullocks, your Julia Roberts. We can go on and on and on. Meryl Streep, obviously, a lot of people
Oh
consider
yeah.
her the GOAT. We've seen many actresses, but I hadn't seen actresses with her look. She
She
had this
has an exotic
long
look,
raven
man.
hair, these dark features, and we're gonna get to later on. She had this look of a Hispanic woman. Some people say mixed look, but she did such a good job, and her energy was amazing. She was going toe to toe in scenes with Anthony Hopkins,
Mhm.
a living legend, and Antonio Banderas, who at this point he was becoming a star. So Martin Campbell knew what he was doing when he casted Catherine Zeta-Jones. We found out later on she had a big theater background,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
she would carry that on to, her other films, like Chicago, where she won
Oh
the
yeah.
Oscar, for that movie. But you talk about the dance scene,
Mhm.
that's some of her theater background too, and she, what an amazing quote unquote breakout role for somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. The first time I recall seeing her was in the Phantom from 1996 with Billy Zane. She's a supporting actor in the film. That was the first time I kind of seen her, but didn't really see her, if that makes any sense, because it was in this movie where I saw her,
Yeah,
because it allowed her to stretch her acting muscles. Where in the movie The Phantom, again, it's another swashbuckle action film and it's fun. She's a supporting role, so she's only getting to do what the script allows her to do. But in this one, she got to really stretch her muscles. She's got great comedic timing in this movie. She's got great dramatic scenes, and she can throw down. She's doing great work with the dancing. She's doing great sword fighting. Like, it's actually her. Like, you can see her, and that's why I really appreciated about the movie was seeing everyone put in the time to get as much done as possible as they could do. And she just radiates the screen every time that she's there. She's got a presence on screen And there were moments where she's on there with, again, a living legend like Anthony Hopkins, and you can see she's doing so much eye acting. And that's obviously where you want to do most of it. That's where we get all of our expression from, is our eyes. And there are scenes where she's just asking a question and you can feel it. Like her eyes are watering up and you can feel the emotion. Even in scenes where she doesn't let the tears drop, you can see them building inside. And it's like a person who's trying to hold it in. And she does such a good job at it. And like you said, she's on there with Antonio Banderas, who was blowing up, Anthony Hopkins, and others, where she's on screen and you can't take your eyes off of her. She just has it. She has that. And I was like you, I was convinced for a long time that she was a Hispanic woman because
Right.
she just had these features. And I swore she was from Spain. And it wasn't until years later that I found out that wasn't the case. But she does such a good job in the role with the dialogue and everything else, her presence. Like, she's an absolute highlight of the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to come back to that in a second. I did want to give some love to Stuart Wilson as Don Rafael Montero,
Mm-hmm.
and Matt Lester. I can't pronounce that right. Matt Lester as
Oh, Reverse Flash. The Reverse Flash. I got you. The Reverse Flash from the CW show.
Yeah, there you go. As
Yeah.
Captain Harrison Love. Good shout there.
Yeah.
Yeah, good
Yeah,
shout.
he was a villain, bro. Like,
Yeah.
remember, we didn't touch on it because it's a small scene, but the scene where he's sitting with Alejandro, where he's showing him the jars of his dead brother,
Yeah.
of his cut off head, and you're just like, oh my god, and he's drinking wine from the
Right.
container, and he does such a good job playing this this almost sociopath, that he can have these emotionless scenes, but there's this really strong energy coming off of him. He's great in the film. He's a great bad guy, an absolute great bad guy. There's a clear distinction between his character and Don Rafael in terms of being villains. Raphael is very political and he can be cruel in nature, but there's something scary about love. There was something really, really scary about it. Just that one scene alone showed it. And yeah, he's another great villain in the film.
So we've talked about how much we love this movie, and we do, and we still love this
I
movie.
adore it.
To this day, and you know, there's no denying that. So we're going to start winding things down now, and we're going to talk a little controversy here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Of course, we got to a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit here. It was appropriate at the time,
Yeah.
and
This happened way a lot
right,
in the past.
it's not unheard of
Mm-hmm.
people playing a role that is not their own ethnicity,
Mm-hmm.
and it happens all the time
Yeah.
in Hollywood. Just and just one way or another. We see this all the time, and obviously we have Sir Anthony Hopkins.
Man, they made my boy tan.
Yeah,
They put some eyeliner on. They made him tan, and I
yeah,
was like, okay, I see
yeah,
you. I see
playing
you.
playing this role here, and then obviously Catherine Zeta-Jones, and
Oh,
I mean, on her end, in all fairness,
dude, she passed really
when
well. Like,
right, and then to the point that, like you had mentioned, to this day, some people don't know that this woman is not
it's not
Hispanic.
Hispanic. Yeah.
Yeah, she's Welsh,
Mm-hmm.
because if you see her just in interviews and such like that, she's has that look.
Yeah, she does. Absolutely.
Um, but not to take anything away from their performances or anybody else that
No,
was
not at all.
in the movie that wasn't Hispanic. Everyone did a great job. At the time, it was appropriate,
Mhm.
because that's just how things were back then.
That's the way studios really were willing to bank on these type of movies.
Right.
Was, if you made the Mask of Zorro in the 90s and you cast relatively unknown actors, studios would be less inclined to want to put maybe a decent budget. Maybe they're worried about not getting as much box office return. You cast a guy like Anthony Hopkins, who is a huge star. He's always been a huge star. As long as I've known Anthony Hopkins, that dude has been a magnificent actor and a huge star. And never in a million years, if you would have told me one day Anthony Hopkins is going to be Zorro, I'd be like, you're out of your mind. But they made it work for the movie. Studios, this is what they did back in the day. Obviously, if this movie was made today, the cast would be fully Hispanic and I would be all on board. I'd be doing my absolute best to get in this thing. I'm like, what do I got to do to get in this thing? But in the 90s and earlier, again, this is no secret. It's been going on for years and years and
Right.
years and years in Hollywood, and it was almost expected for them to do that. I'm very happy we at least got Antonio Banderas in there, who was our co-lead as a Latino, to be able to play the new Zorro and to play Alejandro, and that was great. But yeah, there's a lot of people in the film that are not of Hispanic culture, but it doesn't take away from the amazing performances that they all delivered. Because again, Anthony Hopkins crushed it, man. Everyone in this movie did a great job.
Right.
And again, if it was made today, I would fully support the idea of going fully Hispanic in nature. I'm like, let's
Right.
go for it.
Right. And let's just address it, because just because something happened, you know, that might be considered, not, I don't know how to put it here. Something that might be considered taboo nowadays, with the
Okay.
casting,
Mhm.
doesn't mean that it still wasn't a great movie. I think
Yeah.
about Al Pacino as Scarface. You know,
Oh yeah, that was
you
another
know,
one.
he played a Latino man, but it's one of his greatest roles. Some people consider it
I ri-
his greatest
I
role. Besides The Godfather.
ironically, ironically, one of the worst accents that's ever been on film,
Right,
and yet it's one of his most iconic roles. Like,
right,
hey, let me tell you something, man.
yeah,
Let me tell you, and it's like it's one of the most exaggerated accents I've ever
right.
heard,
But
and
people
it's like
love that role and they love that
exactly,
movie. You know,
exactly.
So, and we can go on and on as far as this issue goes, but I wanted to be clear. We have to address it, but at the same
Mhm.
token, for us, it doesn't take away from the movie as
No,
far
it
as that
doesn't make me
goes.
appreciate the movie any less. It doesn't.
Yeah,
I'm able to be able to look back and realize that when I saw this as a kid and watched it growing up, I was able to walk away from watching a fantastic Zorro film that I hold dear to my heart ever since I was a child. And I can look back on it now and realize that, yeah, if this movie was made today, it would be made differently, and I'd be fully supportive of that. But it doesn't, and even though, like I said, like, oh, that would be considered taboo now, I can still appreciate the movie for what it was, and it was a great time, man. I absolutely love it. I've always been attached to that character. I've got many memories with the character, and I absolutely adore the film in general.
yeah, and Antonio Banderas, he was just on a run at the time.
Yeah,
He went
man.
on to continue making more movies. Like, he was the go-to guy. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, we have a new star now. Let's cast this guy, and then of course the world got introduced to Catherine Zeta-Jones, and you know, such a dramatic rise to fame that she had after being cast in the movie. And I don't want to ignore it. Like, we've talked about it before, but I got to give her love again, as far as that goes. So she did The Mask of Zorro in 1998.
Hmm.
She did Entrapment in 1999, The Haunting in 1999, High Fidelity in 2000, Traffic in 2000 as well, America's Sweethearts in '01, and Chicago in 2002. Within
Bro,
4 years from Zorro to Chicago, and then Chicago is when she won her Oscar.
bro,
So,
she went on a tear, man.
yeah. Yeah, and then she continued to make more movies after that, obviously, but, from her breakout role to her Oscar role was only 4 years, so that needs to be celebrated
Hmm.
as far as that
Absolutely.
goes. And, you know, I I love her. I still love her to this day. She's great. We just saw her as Morticia Addams, right, in the Wednesday TV
Yes,
show.
dude, and she kills it as Morticia. She's
You
got these
know,
great soft moments that reminds you how great of an actor that she is,
yeah,
and it's always great to be reminded, because you know that she just has amazing talent, and I haven't been able to see her in many things as of late, and I'm excited. Like, I remember she did Rock of Ages, and I was so
oh,
excited to
so
see her in
good.
Rock of Ages. And I was like, Catherine's just one of those actors that I'm looking forward to seeing in films. I had a huge crush on her as a kid. How could you not? You know what I
Right.
mean? She was drop dead gorgeous, and everything about her just radiated just brilliant on screen. So it's not surprising to me that she had a tear in films over those 4 years the way that she did, because my God, like, again, she's just that talented.
Yeah. Alrighty. Folks, that was the Panel Bros official breakdown of the Mask of Zorro. If
Yeah.
if you could please give us a like, share, and subscribe on YouTube at the Panel Bros, we'd really appreciate it. As always, please give us a subscribe. That'll help us with our reach so more people can see us and listen to us. Also, if you could please let us know how you felt about the Mask of Zorro in the comments below, we'd appreciate that as well. For Ricardo Segura, this is Anderson Marchak saying thank you for coming to the panel.